Hi, everybody. I'm here today with Noah, who was introduced by a great friend of mine, Lauren. Shout out to Lauren. Thanks for introducing us. So, Noah, do you want to tell me and folks a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. My name is Noah Lewis, and I'm the founder and executive director of Transcend Legal, which is a New York City-based nonprofit. We help trans people in two different areas: name and gender changes in New York, and healthcare access nationwide, specifically insurance coverage for transgender-related healthcare.
Nice. And how long have you been around doing this type of work?
Transcend was founded in October of 2016, but I began working on trans healthcare when I was a law student at Harvard in 2005. I discovered that there was an explicit exclusion for, I believe the word was sex transformations, in the student health plan, so I could not get coverage for surgery. And I did an independent study my third year of law school on researching the legal causes of action that one has to challenge exclusions, and ultimately I got Harvard to remove the exclusion from their student and staff health plans.
Wow, that's amazing. Wow, that's awesome. Well, I mean, the reason why I was so excited to connect with you was because, well, I just recently came out. I told you in the email. So I've been definitely hearing a lot of stories of people either going in debt to be able to get top surgery or whatever surgeries they're looking for. Specifically top surgery, I've seen a lot of folks just straight getting into debt for it. Folks attempting suicide or even, committing suicide themselves, just like having their relationships destroyed and so on and so on. So I wanted to try to understand a little bit more about the healthcare system and why it's failing us so badly. So I come up with a few questions that I would like to dive in a little bit with you, if you can just clarify this to me. So let's talk about surgery, right? Since it's a procedure that kind of takes a lot of time to get access to. And it's a procedure where we hope to get all the possible best results, right? That's kind of what we're looking for. So why don't all doctors just simply accept insurance when it comes to surgery? And do you think they should? And what are some of the obstacles that these doctors may face if they want to take on healthcare insurance?
Mm-hmm. To understand all those questions, you really have to step back and look at the big picture. I mean, first, healthcare in the United States is terrible for everybody. Yeah. But trans people are still facing extra difficulties. And this is just a legacy of the historic discrimination against transgender people. Transgender people have been getting surgery since 1917, 100 years ago. The first hysterectomy was done for purposes of gender reassignment, Dr. Alan Hart here in the United States. And in 1952, Christine Jorgensen came back from her surgery, and it was announced in the papers, and she became a public sensation, and that's when transgender people could see that they were not alone and they were not the only person who felt that way. And in 1966, Harry Benjamin published The Transsexual Phenomenon, which helped to start legitimizing trans-related healthcare in this country. But surgeries had been performed in the 30s in Germany prior to the Nazi era, and the research was being done by Magnus Hirschfeld and his Institute for Sexual Research, which was specifically burned. All the books were burned by the Nazis, and all of that research to show that trans people were not pathological was destroyed. So trans healthcare got set back, decades. So, and it wasn't until the 70s when people started getting insurance coverage for healthcare. Mm-hmm. Prior to that, surgeons were sometimes even afraid to perform it because they could be considered, unlawful to take away somebody who wasn't injured and to perform some, damage to them. But people started bringing lawsuits under Medicaid in California, and the court said yes, you had to cover it. It was medically necessary. It was legitimate health care. Here in New York, there was a case against Aetna where they had tried to exclude surgery under the cosmetic exclusion.
That's my insurance, Edna. I'm looking at you.
And so that's, I think, started the origin of these explicit transgender exclusions, because if they couldn't exclude it as cosmetic, and the court was like, in no way is turning a penis into a vagina cosmetic. Sorry. So then they put in the explicit exclusions, and since trans people lacked political power, there were no legal protections that were being enforced. That's just the way it was for decades. Yeah. And then I would say, a lot of things changed. One thing that has really been instrumental, a lot of people, and rightfully so, criticize the Human Rights Campaign, but one thing that they have done is their Corporate Equality Index, which ranks corporations every year, and in order to get 100%, now you have to have coverage for trans-related health care. So that has really moved the needle in the corporate arena, and that has meant that all the major insurance companies do cover surgery for at least some policies. Yeah. And they've developed their own medical policies for the criteria when it will be covered. Some of them are very restrictive, but nonetheless there are policies in place for when it is covered. But prior to that, it's a whole cycle of discrimination, because it was not covered by insurance, it was not considered legitimate healthcare, it was not taught in medical schools, and then there's very few people getting access to care, because it's only the people who can afford to pay out of pocket who can get it. Yeah. And then guess what? There's no medical research to demonstrate that this is effective at treating gender dysphoria and that it improves people's quality of life. And now it is unethical to conduct those experiments. It would be unethical to withhold treatment that we know is effective in order to do a case control study to demonstrate that scientifically. Yeah. So, but in the era when insurance was not covering it, you really only had a handful of surgeons who were trained to do this, and they had to take people who could pay out of pocket. And so that's just the model that became established. Yeah. To have a few people who are operating outside of major hospitals. I forgot, I left out the fact that, I don't know how I could have left that out, but there were gender clinics at all the major universities, like Johns Hopkins, Stanford, the University of Virginia, University of Michigan, and the programs were very rigid, and there were unfortunate criteria, like you had to be attractive, you had to be heterosexual, and you had to really renounce your former life and just start off new, fresh, without any contact with your family and friends.
Wow.
And it was just this idea that you were never going to tell anybody about your past, and that's the way it was. But people were able to go through those programs, and they were getting surgeries. Until I believe sometime in the 70s, a Catholic man, John McHugh, got in charge of the Johns Hopkins program and decided to shut it down because he was religiously opposed to the surgeries. And he cited a study that was done. It's done improperly. It's not legitimate science, but he was able to use that to shut the clinic down, and that really started to shut them all down. And so now the problem is reimbursement rates is one issue for Medicaid. Even though Medicaid does cover surgeries, they are reimbursing it at the rates for example, for vaginoplasty. Women have vaginoplasties for various reasons, and they're simpler than trans vaginoplasty, but they're reimbursing at the rate for regular vaginoplasty. So
interesting.
So if you're operating in your own clinic, you cannot rely on that to make your practice work. So only people who are working in the large universities and accept Medicaid can take those clients.
Got it. And
until very recently, there were just not enough insurance plans that were covering it to make it viable for a wide variety of people. But the gender clinics at the universities are coming back.
Nice.
There's now, again, they're performing surgeries at Johns Hopkins. We have the Center for Transgender Medicine here at Mount Sinai. NYU is on board. But for years and years, there was nobody in New York City even who was performing genital reassignment surgeries.
Wow, that's like so hard to imagine.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, those are definitely obstacles. It's just that in my kind of like simplistic, I guess, way of thinking, it's like the way I look at from, a patient and like from a person perspective that's not knowledgeable like you are. It's basically like, there are like this handful of surgeons who basically have been doing this for like over a decade, and they don't want to take insurance because obviously, they are like the handful of people who you go to if you want the best results. So what's really the interest of taking insurance, granted that if they don't, they cash out more. So kind of like I was seeing it from more like a capitalist perspective, which do you think that's kind of also like you could see that too, or?
Yeah, I'm not a doctor. I'm not trying to make a living, but I think the insurance reimbursement system is broken for everybody. We do need single payer health care in this country. Yes. But I can't condemn doctors who don't accept insurance, but to the extent that an individual can choose to support somebody who does accept insurance, I think that's a way to go. But the other option that people have is to get reimbursed or to get coverage from the insurance plan. And there's different ways to do it, to get even if you don't have the money up front, to get the person to work with insurance just for that case. That is possible as well. But that is something that...
It's a risk, right?
Well, it depends. But that is something that the trans community could do, would be to set up a loan program for floating people until they can get reimbursed from insurance.
That's a great idea.
But the other thing that there's really, I don't want to say no, but virtually everybody in this country who has insurance should be able to get it covered by insurance. Now, they might have to fight for it, and that's, if somebody has the ability to do that, and they want to kind of contribute to the liberation of trans people and other trans people, and not just have a surgery fundraiser and get their surgery and move on, taking the time to fight with the insurance to get that exclusion removed, that's very important.
Yeah, that kind of like sets a precedence then for everyone else, right? That's good. You really opened my mind to a lot of things here. So the other question was, and we touched a little bit on this, since we don't have universal health care, right? What do you think would be possible solutions for trans folks who are looking to have surgery but can't afford one? So you mentioned this, perhaps doing this loan program would be a good idea, instead of just doing the GoFundMe, then actually pursue a lawsuit against the insurance. And what is the process for folks who are just like low income, and like the idea of starting a lawsuit is just like beyond scope? Like do they still have a chance of that?
It depends on what state they're in. If they're in New York, Medicaid covers surgery. Many states do. And in the other states, there may or may not be an explicit exclusion. It may just depend on the definition of medical necessity, and if you can prove that, then it would be covered. But if you are working in a retail job and you just have low income, that's a situation where you can lobby the employer to, if it's an employer-based health plan, that they're the ones who can determine what's in the plan and what's covered and what's not. So that's something that you can do. You can contact Transcend Legal. Nice. There are other organizations who are working on this. There are various, even a legal aid in your state might be able to get involved, and that's something that we can partner with them. And I understand that it is daunting to have to seek legal action to get the health care that you need, and sometimes that might be your only option. Right. If you cannot afford it.
It also takes time, which causes a whole bunch of more mental health. So it's kind of like this cycle that just keeps on going.
Yeah. But at least knowing that if you are starting the legal process, that you know that there are things happening that you can see, and it can give you some hope.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had really great success. I can't guarantee that for everybody, but companies are removing the exclusions. People, the appeals that we are doing are being successful.
Perfect. And what do you think as far as doctors kind of like keeping each other in check and actually advocate for like different financial plans? Or I'm kind of like an anarchist, so I'm always like sliding scale, you know, like what do you think the doctors actually should play an important role in all of this?
Yeah, and there are doctors who do that, who just have a kind of a regular plastic surgery practice where they have full fee clients, and then they just charge the trans people at cost. And so you can get top surgery for pretty reasonable rates from those people. The other surgeries are a bit more, daunting and more expensive. But I think that as we are seeing more doctors being trained, there are fellowships being created to train people in these surgeries. So we're going to have more providers, and the cost will go down. And so there is a kind of a lag between the insurance coverage happening and then the provider network catching up. So there's no easy, quick answer for everybody, but just to recognize that there is this long legacy of discrimination that is coming to an end, and where this is the best time ever in the U.S., to have access to trans surgery. More people have access than have ever had before.
So it's funny you mentioned this kind of like, this is the best time to get surgery, and it's like really exciting, but then all I think about is Trump. So from a legal perspective, you also must be like really nervous, right, with all of the different chaotic things that are coming out of this administration. Like, do you see any setbacks being, you see it in the horizon happening, coming at us, or?
Yes, the Affordable Care Act is hugely important for trans people. There are specific regulations saying that you cannot have trans exclusions, and those are potentially going to be repealed. And the person that they put in charge of enforcing those regulations has publicly spoken out as being opposed to trans healthcare. So it has gotten harder for trans people to enforce their rights. Just filing a complaint with the Federal Department of Health and Human Services may not get the same results that it would have in the past.
Right.
But the law is still on the books right now. People can still bring lawsuits. People can still assert their rights in a demand letter to an employer. And New York has just issued emergency regulations that implement certain provisions of the Affordable Care Act in state regulations. They mandated essential health benefits and non-discrimination. So, and there are also 19 states that have insurance bulletins that prohibit transgender discrimination in insurance. And additionally, there's state laws that may, if it's not an employer-based plan, they might apply, that prohibit trans discrimination in various contexts. There are federal laws. There is Title VII, which prohibits sex discrimination in employment. There's the Americans with Disabilities Act, which prohibits discrimination. And those aren't going away anytime soon. So there's a whole network of other remedies that are possible. And even outside of that, many people have had success just telling their employer, hey, did you know you have this exclusion? These exclusions came from the insurance companies. Some of the employers weren't even aware that they were in there. And they know now that to be seen as a progressive employer, to attract the best employees, they want to be seen as helping trans people. It's attractive to other employees as well.
Absolutely. And how can folks contact? So do you do just work in New York, or do you have other chapters?
No, we take healthcare cases nationwide.
Wow, that's amazing. So how can folks get in touch with you? I'll obviously put some links, but...
Yeah, our website is transcendlegal.org, and we have a contact form on there where you can let us know what's happening.
Perfect. Do you have also experience dealing with trans immigrant folks as well?
In terms of healthcare?
Yeah.
Yes, the situation for undocumented people getting insurance is bad, so there's not a whole lot we can do with that in general. But otherwise, the immigration status is not going to be a factor.
Great. I always ask because, I've been in this country for like 9 years now, and it's been hell with immigration, and it's just hard to, you can never look at a client just from one perspective, mm-hmm. right? It's all those things happen at the same time, and all these oppressions are just like intertwined, so it's hard.
Yeah, the immigration piece, we deal with that more in the name changes. It comes up there. It shouldn't, but it does.
It does. I'm actually about to change my name, and I got consultation with some other folks. They are transfer education something. I forget their name.
The TLDEF, TILDEF.
That's right, mm-hmm. Yeah. And they gave me some good tips on how to go about that, because I was like, what am I going to do? Like, are they going to just, like, not give me a green? Because, like, anything that you change, right, in immigration, you change the address, it's like, oh, we're just going to delay your green card for another year because you change your address. So name change is a huge deal. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad you folks exist to be able to just give us a hand and guide us through this. So really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Noah.
Thank you.
Yes, and please check out Noah's work and, contact him and get in touch with him and his group. Hi, everyone. So I just wanted to touch base again on the undocumented immigrant situation, just because I don't want you to feel like you're alone out there and that there's absolutely nothing you can do if you want top surgery or if you want to fight for your rights for healthcare. So I did some more research, and I found this group called Familial Transqueer Liberation Movement, which is a group that fight for trans rights, specifically when it comes to immigration rights. So at least you have a group you can connect with. I'm not saying that this group is gonna, be able to help you get surgery through healthcare because your options are really limited when you are an undocumented immigrant, unfortunately, when it comes to big surgeries. But depending on where you live, you may be eligible for Medicaid in case of emergencies. And it seems through my research that actually hormones are much more accessible for undocumented folks. So places like, for example, Planned Parenthood won't ask you your immigration status, and you can get access to hormone therapy. Now, I realize you may not live close to a Planned Parenthood, but it seems that at least there are more options out there. Also, in my research, it seems that as far as in 2011, ICE is obligated to give hormone therapy to trans folks who are already receiving hormones while they are detained. If that's true or not in terms of how that's applied in real life, probably not, but it is on their manual, and I'm sure there will be groups that could help advocate for that, and that do help advocate for that. The Familial Transqueer Liberation Movement, again, is one that I found. I don't know much about them, so if you do know them, please comment and let me know what you think about their work. Another thing I found out that was really cool, in California, I hate politics, so I'm not advocating for this guy. I don't even know what other things this guy has done. But one good initiative, it seems, is this guy, Governor Brown, signs a bill that could help immigrants get access to health care insurance by giving undocumented immigrants the right to actually purchase health insurance through the market, because right now, folks can't even do that. How helpful that really is, again, I'm not sure, because usually undocumented people don't really have financial power to be able to get health insurance and pay for health insurance. But if it's a bill that sells health insurance for undocumented people at a lower rate, at a cheaper price, that may be a good thing. And the other link I'm going to post is from lambdalegal.org. I don't like Lambda Legal. They're super mainstream, super big, but actually the FAQs on Know Your Rights and trans immigration's FAQ was pretty good. So I am going to share that link, but by no means I'm saying that, I endorse this group. So I hope this was useful, and please don't feel alone or like helpless that you cannot do anything. There are groups there to support you. So I'll see you folks next week.